Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, her hands steady despite the chaos erupting around her. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete obstacle course where 30 of America's most elite warriors were struggling with what their instructors called the impossible mission. Commander Jack Reeves watched from his observation tower, his weathered face showing the skepticism that had earned him respect among the Navy SEALs. At 45, he had seen everything the military could throw at a person. He had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, led rescue missions in hostile territory, and trained hundreds of special operations personnel. Nothing surprised him anymore. Nothing except the 26-year-old woman standing calmly below. Sarah had arrived at the facility 3 weeks earlier as part of a new Pentagon initiative to integrate female personnel into elite special operations units. The program was controversial, and Commander Reeves made no secret of his doubts. He believed that some barriers existed for good reasons, and physical limitations were not something that could be overcome through determination alone. The current exercise was designed to test those limits. Teams of 6 operators had to navigate a complex urban warfare simulation that included building clearing, hostage rescue, and bomb disposal under extreme time pressure. The scenario was based on a real mission that had taken place in Syria 2 years earlier, where a SEAL team had needed 4 hours to complete successfully. Today's challenge was different. The teams had 90 minutes to complete what had originally taken 4 hours. Most military experts considered it impossible under the new time constraints. "Mitchell, you're with Alpha Team," Commander Reeves announced through his radio. "Rodriguez will lead." Sergeant First Class Miguel Rodriguez was a 10-year veteran who had earned his reputation in the mountains of Afghanistan. He was known for his tactical brilliance and his ability to think quickly under pressure. He was also known for his traditional views about women in combat roles. "Sir, with respect, I don't think this is the right exercise for someone who hasn't completed the full SEAL training program," Rodriguez said into his radio, glancing at Sarah with barely concealed frustration. Sarah heard the comment through her earpiece, but said nothing. She had learned during her first week at the facility that actions spoke louder than arguments. She had also learned that many of the men here were waiting for her to fail, not because they were cruel, but because they genuinely believed she would put their brothers in danger. She understood their concern. Special operations units depended on absolute trust between team members. That trust was built through shared hardship and proven capability under extreme stress. Sarah was an outsider who had not earned that trust through the traditional pathway. What they didn't know was that Sarah had spent the last 8 years preparing for this moment. She had grown up in rural Montana, where her father ran a wilderness survival school for military contractors and law enforcement agencies. By the age of 12, she could track animals through difficult terrain, start fires in wet conditions, and navigate using only the stars. By 16, she was teaching wilderness medicine to adult students. Her path to the Navy had been unusual. After graduating from MIT with degrees in electrical engineering and computer science, she had been recruited by a defense contractor that specialized in developing technology for special operations forces. Her work had taken her to forward operating bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, where she had learned to operate in combat zones and had earned the respect of the operators who used her equipment. When the Pentagon announced its new integration program, Sarah had volunteered immediately. She knew that she would face skepticism and that she would have to prove herself every day. She was prepared for that challenge. The exercise began with a briefing in the Tactical Operations Center. The scenario involved a terrorist cell that had taken hostages in a multi-story building complex. Intelligence indicated that the terrorists had planted explosive devices throughout the buildings and were prepared to detonate them if they detected any rescue attempt. The original mission took 4 hours because the team had to move slowly to avoid detection, Commander Reeves explained to the assembled operators. "Today, you have 90 minutes total. The terrorist cell will execute the hostages and blow the buildings if you take longer." The teams began their approach to the target building. Sarah moved with Alpha Team through the urban terrain, noting how Rodriguez positioned his men and observing the tactical decisions he made. She had studied hundreds of hours of similar operations and had developed her own theories about how to improve efficiency without compromising safety. The first building was a three-story office complex with multiple entry points and unknown enemy positions. Rodriguez called for a standard dynamic entry through the front and rear entrances, with covering fire from overwatch positions. Rodriguez, Sarah said quietly into her radio. The thermal imaging shows heat signatures on the second floor, east side. If we enter through the maintenance access on the north side, we can bypass the ground floor entirely and catch them from an unexpected angle. Rodriguez paused. He had not considered the maintenance access, mainly because it required climbing skills that were beyond the capability of most operators. That's a 30-foot vertical climb on the exterior of the building, he replied. Too risky. I can do it in under 2 minutes, Sarah said. I can secure the access point and provide overwatch while you make your standard entry. It gives us eyes on the terrorist positions before you go in. Rodriguez looked at the building and calculated the risks. The standard approach would work, but it would cost them valuable time. They had already used 15 minutes just getting into position. He made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Do it, he said. Sarah moved to the north side of the building and began her climb. She had been rock climbing since childhood and had spent countless hours on artificial climbing walls during her preparation for this program. The building's exterior offered multiple handholds and footholds that were invisible to most people but obvious to someone with her experience. She reached the maintenance access in 90 seconds. From her position on the second floor, Sarah could see the entire tactical situation. The terrorists had positioned themselves exactly where the thermal imaging had indicated, but they had also placed sentries in locations that would have caught Rodriguez's team in a crossfire during a standard entry. Rodriguez, you have 2 additional hostiles in the southwest stairwell, she reported. They're positioned to hit your rear entry team. I can take them from here. Negative, Rodriguez replied immediately. You're not authorized to engage. Sarah could see the tactical situation developing below. Rodriguez's team was moving into position for their entry, but they would be walking into a trap. The sentries in the stairwell were armed with automatic weapons and had clear fields of fire on both entry points. She made a decision that would change everything. Instead of engaging the sentries directly, Sarah used her engineering background to create a different solution. She had noticed that the building's fire suppression system was connected to the same electrical panel she was positioned near. By creating a controlled short circuit, she could trigger the sprinkler system throughout the building. The sudden activation of the sprinklers created chaos among the terrorist positions. They moved away from their concealed positions to avoid the water, exposing themselves to Rodriguez's overwatch teams. Within 30 seconds, all 4 sentries had been neutralized by suppressed rifle fire from outside the building. How did you know about the fire suppression system? Rodriguez asked as his team moved through the now-clear building. I studied the building plans during our briefing time, Sarah replied. Most commercial buildings built after 2005 have integrated systems that can be triggered from central electrical panels. The team cleared the first building in 28 minutes, well ahead of their projected timeline. Rodriguez began to see Sarah differently. Her unconventional approach had saved them time and potentially prevented casualties among his team. The second building presented a different challenge. Intelligence indicated that the terrorists had rigged the entire structure with explosives that could be triggered remotely. Any attempt to enter the building could result in detonation. This is where we need the bomb disposal team, Rodriguez said, studying the building through his binoculars. Standard protocol requires a full explosive ordnance disposal sweep before entry. Sarah was studying the building through her own optics, but she was looking at different details. Rodriguez, look at the wiring configuration on the exterior walls. The explosive charges are connected to a central detonation system, but they're using commercial electrical wire instead of military-grade explosive cable. What's the difference? Rodriguez asked. Commercial wire can be disrupted by electromagnetic interference, Sarah explained. If we can generate a strong enough electromagnetic pulse near the central control point, we can disable the detonation system without going inside. Rodriguez was skeptical. We don't have EMP equipment with us. Sarah smiled for the first time since the exercise had begun. We don't need specialized equipment. I can build an EMP generator using the radio equipment in our vehicles and some components from the electrical panel in the first building. You can build an EMP weapon in the field? Rodriguez asked, incredulous. It's not a weapon exactly, Sarah explained. It's more like a very powerful radio transmitter that creates interference across a broad spectrum. I wrote a paper about it in graduate school. Rodriguez made another decision that surprised his team. Do it. While Rodriguez positioned his team around the second building, Sarah went back to their vehicles and began disassembling radio equipment. She worked with the precision of someone who had been building electronic devices since childhood, connecting wires and components in configurations that looked random to the other operators, but followed a clear engineering logic. 20 minutes later, she had constructed a device that looked like a science fair project, but generated enough electromagnetic interference to disrupt electronic systems within a 50-meter radius. Everyone turn off your radios and electronic equipment, Sarah announced. This is going to create interference across all frequencies for about 30 seconds. She activated her improvised EMP generator. The effect was immediate. Every electronic device in the area shut down, including the terrorist detonation system for the explosive charges. Rodriguez's team had a 30-second window to enter the building before electronic systems could be restarted. They didn't need 30 seconds. Rodriguez led his team through the building in 18 seconds, clearing each room with the efficiency that had made him one of the Navy's most respected operators. They found the hostages on the third floor and secured the building without a single casualty. The third building was the most challenging. Intelligence indicated that it contained the terrorist leadership and the most dangerous of the improvised explosive devices. It was also where the exercise would succeed or fail based on time remaining. Rodriguez looked at his watch. They had 37 minutes left. This is where we either finish strong or fail completely, he told his team. Sarah was studying the third building when she noticed something that changed her understanding of the entire exercise. Rodriguez, this building has the same architectural design as the embassy compound in Benghazi. Rodriguez looked more carefully and realized she was right. You think this exercise is based on a real scenario? I think this exercise is preparing us for a real scenario that might happen someday, Sarah said. And I think I know how to cut our time in half. She explained her plan. Instead of clearing the building room by room, they would use the building's ventilation system to introduce a non-lethal gas that would incapacitate the terrorists without harming the hostages. She had noticed that the building's HVAC system was designed with a central air handler that could be accessed from the roof. We don't have non-lethal gas, Rodriguez pointed out. We can make it, Sarah said. Tear gas canisters combined with the fire suppression system can create a controlled environment that will force the terrorists out of their positions without causing permanent harm. Rodriguez was beginning to understand that Sarah's engineering background gave her options that traditional military thinking didn't consider. What do you need? Sarah outlined a plan that was both simple and complex. She would access the building's roof, modify the HVAC system to distribute tear gas throughout the building, and then trigger the fire suppression system to create an environment that would force the terrorists to evacuate their positions without harming the hostages. The plan required precise timing and technical knowledge that went beyond standard military training, but Rodriguez was beginning to trust Sarah's unconventional approach. We do this together, Rodriguez said. My team provides security while you handle the technical aspects. They reached the roof of the third building with 28 minutes remaining. Sarah began modifying the HVAC system while Rodriguez's team provided overwatch and prepared for the chaos that would follow. What happened next would become part of Navy SEAL legend. Sarah's modifications to the building's systems worked exactly as she had predicted. The controlled introduction of tear gas forced the terrorists out of their concealed positions, and the activation of the fire suppression system prevented any risk of fire or explosion. Rodriguez's team was able to capture the terrorist leadership and secure all hostages within 12 minutes. They had completed the impossible mission with 16 minutes to spare. Commander Reeves watched from his observation tower as Alpha Team emerged from the third building with their objectives complete. He had expected them to fail, like the other 4 teams that had attempted the exercise. Instead, they had succeeded in a way that challenged everything he thought he knew about special operations tactics. Rodriguez, report to the Tactical Operations Center immediately, Commander Reeves announced over the radio. Bring Mitchell with you. As they walked toward the debriefing, Rodriguez looked at Sarah with something that might have been respect. I owe you an apology, he said. You don't owe me anything, Sarah replied. You trusted me when it counted. T.H. Rodriguez glanced at Sarah before addressing Commander Reeves. The Tactical Operations Center felt different now, charged with an energy that hadn't been there during previous debriefings. The other teams had failed this exercise, but Alpha Team had not just succeeded. They had revolutionized the approach entirely. Sir, Mitchell identified structural and systems vulnerabilities that we hadn't considered in our standard tactical planning, Rodriguez began, his voice carrying a respect that hadn't been there 3 hours earlier. Her engineering background allowed her to see options that traditional military training doesn't cover. Commander Reeves studied Sarah with the intensity that had made him legendary among special operations personnel. At 45, he had developed an ability to read people that went beyond standard military assessment protocols. What he saw in Sarah Mitchell challenged assumptions he had held for his entire career. Mitchell, walk me through your decision-making process, Commander Reeves said, his tone neutral but his attention focused. Start with the first building. Sarah straightened, but maintained the relaxed confidence that had impressed Rodriguez's team. Sir, I approached each building as an integrated system rather than just a tactical target. The first building's maintenance access provided a climbing route that most operators wouldn't consider feasible, but I had the technical climbing background to execute it safely. And you made that assessment in real time? Commander Reeves asked. I had studied the building plans during our briefing period, Sarah explained. I noticed the maintenance access was positioned to provide overwatch on positions that wouldn't be visible from standard entry points. The thermal imaging confirmed enemy positions, but it also showed me that they had prepared for conventional assault tactics. Colonel James Harrison, the base commander who had been observing silently, leaned forward. Mitchell, you're saying you identified tactical advantages by studying building blueprints rather than just terrain and enemy positions? Yes, sir. Buildings are engineered systems with predictable vulnerabilities and capabilities. If you understand the engineering, you can exploit those systems in ways that surprise opponents who are thinking purely in terms of weapons and tactics. Commander Reeves was beginning to understand that Sarah's approach represented something fundamentally different from traditional special operations thinking. Explain the electromagnetic pulse device. Sarah's explanation was precise and technical, but she delivered it in language that the operators could understand. Commercial explosive detonation systems rely on electronic triggers that are vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. I built a broadband radio transmitter using our existing equipment that created enough interference to disable their electronic systems temporarily. You built an EMP weapon using field radio equipment? Colonel Harrison asked, incredulous. It wasn't exactly a weapon, sir. It was more like a very powerful radio jammer that affected all electronic devices in the area, including our own. But I calculated that we could execute the building assault faster than they could restore their systems and reactivate the explosive charges. Rodriguez added his perspective to the discussion. Sir, Mitchell's technical solutions saved us approximately 45 minutes compared to standard procedures. Without her innovations, we would have failed the time constraint. Commander Reeves was quiet for several minutes, processing what he had heard. The exercise had been designed to be impossible under the time constraints, based on real-world scenarios where special operations teams had needed much longer to achieve the same objectives. Sarah had not just beaten the time limit. She had redefined what was possible. Mitchell, you realize that what you did today goes against decades of established special operations doctrine? Commander Reeves said finally. Yes, sir. But I also realize that established doctrine is based on available capabilities at the time it was developed. When you add new capabilities, you can develop new doctrine. Colonel Harrison exchanged glances with Commander Reeves. Both men were thinking about the implications of what they had witnessed. Mitchell, your background is electrical engineering and computer science? Yes, sir. I specialized in systems integration and electronic warfare applications. I've spent the last 8 years developing technology for special operations forces, which is how I became familiar with the tactical requirements and limitations of current approaches. And you volunteered for this integration program? Commander Reeves asked. Yes, sir. I believe that my technical background could contribute to special operations capabilities in ways that hadn't been fully explored. Rodriguez spoke up. Sir, I need to say something on the record. I was skeptical about having Mitchell on my team. I thought she would be a liability. I was wrong. She didn't just contribute to our success. She made our success possible. Commander Reeves noted the sincerity in Rodriguez's voice. Rodriguez was not someone who changed his opinions easily, and his endorsement carried significant weight among the other operators. Mitchell, what's your assessment of the other challenges in this program? Commander Reeves asked. Sarah had been thinking about this question since her arrival at the facility. Sir, I think the program is approaching integration from the wrong angle. Instead of trying to prove that women can do exactly what men do in special operations, we should be asking how different capabilities can improve special operations effectiveness. Explain, Colonel Harrison said. Physical standards exist for good reasons, and I'm not suggesting they should be lowered. But special operations missions are becoming more complex and technical. They require capabilities beyond pure physical performance. The integration program should focus on identifying personnel with specialized skills that complement traditional special operations training. Commander Reeves was intrigued. What kind of specialized skills? Electronic warfare, cyber operations, advanced engineering, linguistic capabilities, cultural expertise, medical specializations. There are dozens of technical areas where special operations forces need expertise that goes beyond what traditional training provides. Rodriguez nodded. Sir, the missions we're getting now are different from what we trained for 10 years ago. We're dealing with sophisticated electronic systems, complex urban environments, and opponents who understand our traditional tactics. And you think technical specialists can address those challenges? Commander Reeves asked. I think technical specialists who are also trained to operate in high-stress combat environments can address those challenges, Sarah said. But that requires a different approach to training and integration. Colonel Harrison was taking notes. What kind of different approach? Sarah outlined her thoughts on how the integration program could be restructured. Instead of trying to push women through identical training programs designed for different physical capabilities, the program should identify personnel with specialized technical skills and develop training programs that leverage those skills while building the tactical capabilities needed for special operations. You're talking about creating specialized roles within special operations teams, Commander Reeves observed. I'm talking about recognizing that special operations missions already require specialized roles, and that we should be selecting and training personnel based on the full range of capabilities needed for modern missions. Rodriguez added his perspective. Sir, I've been on missions where we needed technical expertise that none of us had. We had to rely on remote support or bring in specialists who weren't trained for combat operations. Having team members with those technical skills would have made those missions much more effective. Commander Reeves was beginning to see the broader implications of what had happened during the exercise. Sarah hadn't just completed an impossible mission. She had demonstrated a new model for how special operations teams could be structured and equipped. Mitchell, if you were designing a training program for technical specialists in special operations, what would it look like? Sarah had been thinking about this question for months. Sir, it would combine specialized technical training with modified special operations training that focuses on the specific requirements for technical personnel in combat environments. She explained her vision for a program that would identify personnel with advanced technical degrees and proven capabilities in relevant specializations, then provide them with intensive training in tactical operations, weapons systems, and combat survival skills. The program would not try to make them identical to traditional special operations personnel, but would ensure they could operate effectively as integrated team members. The physical standards would still be demanding, Sarah emphasized. Technical specialists in combat environments need to be able to carry equipment, move rapidly across difficult terrain, and function under extreme stress. But the training would be tailored to their specific roles. Colonel Harrison was intrigued. How long would such a training program take? I estimate 18 months for personnel who already have the technical qualifications. That includes 12 months of modified special operations training followed by 6 months of integrated team training with traditional operators. Commander Reeves was calculating the implications. You're talking about a significant investment in personnel development. Yes, sir. But I'm also talking about capabilities that could revolutionize special operations effectiveness. Today's exercise demonstrated just one example of what's possible when technical expertise is integrated with tactical operations. Rodriguez supported Sarah's assessment. Sir, what Mitchell did today couldn't be replicated by someone without her technical background. But it also couldn't have been accomplished by someone who didn't understand tactical operations. It required both skill sets working together. Commander Reeves stood and walked to the window overlooking the training facility. Outside, the other teams were still struggling with the exercise that Alpha Team had completed in 74 minutes. He was witnessing the difference between traditional approaches and innovative thinking. Mitchell, are there other personnel with your background who might be interested in this type of program? Yes, sir. I know dozens of engineers, computer scientists, and other technical specialists who have worked with special operations forces and understand the tactical requirements. Many of them have expressed interest in more direct involvement in operations. Colonel Harrison was making calculations. If we were to develop a pilot program based on your recommendations, how many personnel do you think we could recruit? For a pilot program, I estimate we could recruit 20 to 30 highly qualified candidates within 6 months. These would be personnel with advanced degrees, relevant technical experience, and demonstrated interest in special operations applications. Commander Reeves turned back to face the group. Mitchell, I'm going to ask you a direct question. Do you think the current integration program is going to succeed? Sarah considered her answer carefully. Sir, I think the current program is trying to solve the wrong problem. Instead of proving that women can meet existing standards, we should be asking how different capabilities can improve mission effectiveness. Today's exercise demonstrated that innovative approaches can achieve results that traditional methods cannot. And you think a technical specialist program would be more successful? I think a technical specialist program would be more valuable to special operations forces. And I think it would attract personnel who are motivated by the opportunity to contribute specialized skills rather than just by the challenge of meeting existing standards. Rodriguez added his perspective. Sir, after working with Mitchell today, I would request technical specialists for any mission involving complex urban environments, electronic systems, or unconventional tactical challenges. Commander Reeves was reaching conclusions that would have seemed impossible when the day began. Mitchell, if I were to offer you the opportunity to design and lead a technical specialist program, would you be interested? Sarah had hoped for this opportunity, but hadn't expected it to come this quickly. Yes, sir. I believe such a program could significantly enhance special operations capabilities. What would you need to get started? Sarah outlined her requirements. Access to special operations training facilities, authorization to recruit technical specialists from military and civilian backgrounds, and integration with existing special operations units for practical training and evaluation. I would also need support from experienced operators like Sergeant Rodriguez, Sarah added. The program would only succeed if traditional operators and technical specialists learn to work together effectively. Rodriguez nodded. Sir, I volunteer to participate in any program Mitchell develops. What I saw today convinced me that we need to change how we approach these challenges. Colonel Harrison was taking detailed notes. Mitchell, I want you to prepare a formal proposal for a technical specialist program. Include personnel requirements, training curriculum, equipment needs, and projected timelines. Can you have that ready in 2 weeks? Yes, sir. Commander Reeves returned to his seat. Mitchell, I owe you an apology. I believe that integration was a political exercise that would compromise operational effectiveness. You've demonstrated that integration, done correctly, can enhance operational effectiveness beyond what I thought possible. Sir, I understood your skepticism. It was based on valid concerns about maintaining operational standards. I hope today demonstrated that we can maintain those standards while adding new capabilities. It demonstrated much more than that, Commander Reeves said. It demonstrated that we need to fundamentally reconsider what those standards should include. The debriefing continued for another hour, with Sarah providing detailed explanations of her technical solutions and Rodriguez describing how those solutions had integrated with traditional tactical operations. By the end of the discussion, everyone in the room understood that they had witnessed something significant. As they prepared to leave, Commander Reeves made one final observation. Mitchell, What you accomplish today will be studied and discussed throughout the special operations community. You've shown us what's possible when innovation meets expertise. Sarah nodded respectfully. Sir, what we accomplished today. It required teamwork and trust between operators with different backgrounds. That's the model we need to develop. Rodriguez smiled. Mitchell, I'm proud to have been part of your team, Todd. 3 months after the exercise that changed everything, Sarah stood in front of a briefing room filled with 28 of the most technically qualified military personnel she had ever encountered. The Pilot Technical Specialist Integration Program had attracted applications from across all branches of the military, and the selection process had been more competitive than anyone had anticipated. Commander Reeves sat in the back of the room, observing the first day of training for what would either revolutionize special operations or prove that the successful exercise had been a one-time anomaly. The stakes were higher now because word of Sarah's success had reached the Pentagon, and senior military leadership was watching to see if innovative thinking could be systematized and replicated. Welcome to TSIP, Sarah began, using the acronym that had already become familiar throughout the special operations community. You're here because you have technical expertise that could enhance mission effectiveness, and because you've demonstrated the motivation to operate in high-stress combat environments. The personnel in the room represented an unprecedented combination of capabilities. There were electrical engineers who had developed countermeasures for improvised explosive devices, computer scientists who specialized in cyber warfare, medical doctors with expertise in trauma surgery, linguists who spoke languages critical to current operations, and materials scientists who understood advanced weapons systems. What they all had in common was a desire to use their specialized knowledge in direct support of special operations missions. Dr. Jennifer Chun, a biomedical engineer who had developed portable diagnostic equipment for battlefield medicine, raised her hand. Sarah, how do we balance technical responsibilities with tactical operations requirements? It was a question Sarah had been expecting because it addressed the fundamental challenge of the program. Jennifer, that's exactly what we're going to figure out over the next 18 months. The goal is not to make you identical to traditional operators, but to make you effective teammates who can contribute specialized capabilities while functioning in combat environments. Sergeant First Class Marcus Thompson, who had volunteered for the program after working with Sarah on several equipment development projects, added his perspective. The key is understanding how your technical skills integrate with tactical operations. It's not about doing 2 separate jobs. It's about doing one job that combines both skill sets. Sarah had spent the 3 months since the exercise developing a training curriculum that would prepare technical specialists for the realities of special operations while maintaining their focus on their specialized capabilities. The program was ambitious and untested, but it was based on lessons learned from real operational requirements. Your training will be different from traditional special operations programs, Sarah explained. We'll focus on the physical and tactical skills you need to operate effectively with special operations teams, but we won't try to duplicate capabilities that traditional operators already provide. Captain Michael Roberts, a nuclear engineer who had worked on threat assessment for weapons of mass destruction, looked concerned. Sarah, what about physical standards? How do we know if we're capable of keeping up with traditional operators? Sarah had anticipated this question as well. Michael, the physical standards for this program are based on the requirements of your specific role. A cyber warfare specialist needs different physical capabilities than a combat medic, and both need different capabilities than a traditional assault operator. She outlined the physical training program that had been developed specifically for technical specialists. It emphasized functional fitness, stress inoculation, and the ability to perform technical tasks under extreme physical and psychological pressure. The program was demanding, but tailored to the realities of how technical specialists would actually operate in combat environments. The goal is to ensure that you can carry your equipment, move with your team, and function effectively when everything goes wrong, Sarah explained. We're not trying to make you into traditional operators, but we are ensuring that you won't be a liability to your team. Rodriguez entered the briefing room, carrying the equipment that would be used for the first practical exercise. Over the past 3 months, he had become one of the strongest advocates for the technical specialist program, and His endorsement had been crucial in gaining support from the traditional special operations community. "Good morning, everyone," Rodriguez said. "Today we're going to start with a simple exercise that will demonstrate how technical capabilities integrate with tactical operations." The exercise was based on a real scenario that Rodriguez's team had encountered 6 months earlier in Syria. They had been tasked with disabling a communications facility that was coordinating terrorist activities. But the facility was protected by sophisticated electronic countermeasures that had prevented traditional approaches. In the real mission, we had to call in remote technical support and wait 18 hours for equipment to arrive, Rodriguez explained. Today, we're going to see how having technical specialists on the team might have changed that timeline. The exercise began with a tactical approach to a mock communications facility that had been constructed on the training facility. The technical specialists were integrated into traditional assault teams, with each specialist responsible for specific technical objectives, while the traditional operators provided security and tactical leadership. Dr. Chin found herself working alongside Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, a medic who had been selected to participate in the program because of her interest in advanced battlefield medicine. Their objective was to disable the facility's power systems while providing medical support for the team. "Dr. Chun, what's your assessment of the electrical systems?" Sergeant Gonzalez asked as they approached the target building. "The facility is using a backup generator system with multiple redundancies," Dr. Chin replied, studying the building through her specialized optics. "Standard approaches would require cutting multiple power lines. But if we can access the central control panel, I can create a cascade failure that will shut down the entire system." "How long do you need?" Sergeant Gonzalez asked. 3 minutes if I can reach the control panel safely." Rodriguez was monitoring the exercise from his position with the command team. What he observed was a level of tactical sophistication that went beyond what either traditional operators or technical specialists could achieve independently. Captain Roberts was working with Sergeant Thompson to analyze the facility's communications equipment. His nuclear engineering background had given him expertise in electromagnetic systems that was directly applicable to electronic warfare. Thompson, the communications array, is using frequency hopping to avoid jamming, Captain Roberts reported. "But the hopping pattern is based on a mathematical algorithm that I can reverse engineer if I can access their transmission data for about 90 seconds. "Can you do that while we're under fire?" Thompson asked. "I can do it while carrying a full combat load and running if necessary," Roberts replied with confidence that came from 3 months of intensive physical and tactical training. Sarah was positioned with the Overwatch team, using her engineering background to analyze the entire facility as an integrated system. What she saw convinced her that the technical specialist approach was working even better than she had hoped. "Rodriguez, the facility's defensive systems are integrated through a central computer that controls everything from security cameras to automated weapons," Sarah reported. "If we can access that computer, we can turn their defenses against them." "What do you need?" Rodriguez asked. "I need physical access to their server room for about 5 minutes. But first, we need to create a distraction that draws their attention away from the server location." Rodriguez smiled as he realized what Sarah was proposing. "You want to hack their own security system to provide cover for our assault? I want to use their own technology to defeat their defenses. It's more efficient than fighting through their defensive positions." The exercise continued with a level of innovation and effectiveness that impressed everyone involved. The technical specialists were not just contributing their specialized knowledge. They were thinking tactically and integrating their capabilities with traditional assault methods in ways that created entirely new possibilities. Dr. Chin succeeded in shutting down the facility's power systems by creating a controlled electrical surge that cascaded through the backup generators. Captain Roberts reverse-engineered the communications protocols and used the facility's own equipment to jam their emergency frequencies. Sarah accessed the central computer and reprogrammed the security system to unlock doors and disable automated defenses. The exercise that had originally taken 18 hours was completed in 42 minutes. Commander Reeves joined the debrief with an expression that Sarah had learned to recognize as surprised satisfaction. "Explain to me what just happened," he said. Rodriguez provided the tactical summary. "Sir, the technical specialists didn't just complete their assigned objectives. they identified opportunities for tactical innovation that wouldn't have been apparent to traditional operators. Sarah added the technical perspective. Sir, when you understand how the enemy's systems work, you can exploit those systems in ways that go beyond just destroying them. We turn their technology into our tactical advantage. Dr. Chun described her approach to the power systems. Commander, instead of trying to cut individual power lines, I analyzed the electrical system as a whole and found a way to create a failure cascade that shut down everything simultaneously. Captain Roberts explained his communications jamming technique. Sir, by understanding the mathematical algorithms that controlled their frequency hopping, I could predict their transmission patterns and jam them more effectively than traditional electronic warfare equipment. Commander Reeves was processing what he had witnessed. You're telling me that technical understanding allowed you to defeat defensive systems faster and more completely than traditional assault methods? Yes, sir, Sarah replied. But only because we combined that technical understanding with tactical training and effective teamwork. The technical capabilities are force multipliers, but they require tactical integration to be effective. Rodriguez emphasized this point. Sir, what made this work was that the technical specialists understood tactical operations well enough to apply their specialized knowledge effectively. They weren't just technical consultants, they were integrated team members. Commander Reeves had been taking notes throughout the debrief. Sarah, what's your assessment of the program's progress? Sir, I'm more optimistic than I expected to be at this point. The technical specialists are adapting to tactical operations faster than projected, and the traditional operators are learning to integrate technical capabilities into their planning more effectively than I anticipated. What challenges do you foresee? Sarah had been thinking about this question throughout the 3 months of program development. Sir, the biggest challenge is scaling the program without compromising the quality of training and integration. What we've demonstrated works with small teams of highly motivated personnel, but implementing it across the special operations community will require significant changes in training, equipment, and organizational structure. Rodriguez added his perspective. Sir, the traditional special operations community is accepting the program because they can see the operational benefits. But that acceptance depends on maintaining the standards and effectiveness that they expect from team members. And you think those standards are being maintained? Commander Reeves asked. Sir, I think those standards are being exceeded in ways that demonstrate new possibilities for special operations effectiveness, Rodriguez replied. Commander Reeves was reaching conclusions that would shape the future of special operations training. Sarah, I want you to expand the program. I want to see how this approach works with larger teams and more complex missions. Sir, what kind of expansion are you envisioning? I want to integrate technical specialists into actual operational teams for real missions. Not exercises or simulations, but actual special operations where their capabilities can be tested under genuine operational conditions. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. The program had succeeded beyond expectations, but real operations would present challenges that no training exercise could fully simulate. Sir, I recommend starting with low-risk missions that require technical capabilities but don't present extreme tactical challenges. We need to prove operational effectiveness before attempting high-risk operations. What kind of missions? Commander Reeves asked. Reconnaissance missions involving sophisticated electronic systems, infrastructure assessment operations, or technical intelligence gathering. Missions where technical expertise provides clear advantages and where operational risk can be managed. Rodriguez supported this approach. Sir, that would allow us to evaluate how technical specialists perform under operational stress while building confidence among traditional operators. Commander Reeves was making decisions that would affect the entire special operations community. Sarah, you have authorization to select appropriate operational assignments for your technical specialists. Rodriguez, I want you to lead the tactical integration for these operations. Yes, sir. Both replied simultaneously. As the meeting concluded, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first impossible exercise 3 months earlier. What had begun as a demonstration that one person could think differently about tactical problems had evolved into a program that could reshape how special operations forces approached complex missions. The real test would come when technical specialists faced the unpredictability and stress of actual operations, where innovative thinking would have to work under conditions that no training exercise could replicate completely. Sarah was confident that they were ready for that test. The personnel in the program had demonstrated both technical expertise and tactical adaptability. They had proven that different capabilities could enhance rather than compromise operational effectiveness. Most importantly, they had shown that innovation and tradition could work together to achieve results that neither approach could accomplish independently. The impossible had become possible, and now it was time to prove that possible could become standard. 1. I'm proud to have been part of your team, Rodriguez. As they walked out of the Tactical Operations Center, Sarah reflected on how much had changed in 90 seconds of innovative thinking followed by several hours of proving that innovation could work in practice. She had not just completed an impossible mission. She had opened the door to a new approach to special operations that could benefit from the full range of human capabilities and expertise. The challenge now would be turning today's success into a sustainable program that could train and integrate technical specialists throughout the special operations community. Sarah was ready for that challenge. That's all I needed. How did you know all of that would work? Rodriguez asked. Sarah smiled. I didn't know for certain, but I knew enough about the engineering principles to calculate the probability of success. Sometimes that's all you can do. Commander Reeves was waiting for them in the Tactical Operations Center, along with several other senior officers who had been observing the exercise. His expression was unreadable, but Sarah had learned to recognize the signs of a man who was recalculating his assumptions. Explain to me what just happened out there, Commander Reeves said.